Within the production of creating both my main newspaper product and ancillary tasks, I have used various technologies within different stages of production. These are seen in media as the stages of pre-production, production and post-production. During pre-production, I used various amounts of technology. The first use was the computer hardware, which at college was a Windows XP computer and at home was a MacBook Pro laptop, which enabled me to use different pieces of software when downloaded onto the computer. These are the sole basis of each of these stages, as I was able to use each piece by logging onto a computer, either being my own or a college's personal account. In order to use the internet, a web browser was needed so that I could access the internet provided I had a connection. I used two different types of this. These were Windows Explorer on the college Windows network and Safari for my Mac. The advantages of these two web browsers were that I was able to surf the internet easily on both of them and would easily be able to maneuver between the two if I had problems. However, depending on how many tabs were open on the browser, this would cause the browser to shut down and could end up with my work not uploading to our blogs and generally getting lost. Once I was on the web browser, I used various amounts of websites, the first being the search engine Google. This helped me to freely research various aspects of my production, such as using JITREG in order to find my demographic audience. This was used to easily find other websites which would aid my researching skills and help me to further my planning. Through Google, I found a lot of information and was able to quicken the pre-production mainly through the use of this. A disadvantage for using this technology would be that most educational information would be placed at the bottom of the page, whereas the most popular searches would be at the beginning. This was unhelpful when trying to find out codes and conventions of text, as it unintentionally led me to other media codes and conventions which made them at times unreliable results. I use both Google Mail and Postgres accounts throughout planning and other stages of production. I have continued to use both of these accounts from my AS coursework to present my work. My Google Mail account was used so that I was able to post all progress on my work to my blog, which is connected directly towards it. This has helped me to present research, appendices and other work on my blog easily without having any trouble. Postgres was used to portray all our work we had created throughout the course of the creation period. It also allowed us to keep organised with our work without relying on manually written work. The blog was quite useful for such reasons as backing up if we had lost a file. It was easily discovered through the document being on our blog. It was also useful for the fact any specific web sharing device, such as a YouTube video or Bubbleless Brainstorm, was embedded simply into a post without any complication. When concerning technology, it is an example of Web 2.0, founded by O'Reilly, as it is used to interact with various audiences and not only for one sole reader. I was primarily able to use this blog to display how I met and challenged conventions in my work throughout the posts I had sent. I used Postgres through all of the stages to show my progress. It was also particularly useful as we were able to post our production schedules onto the site to present evidence of planning within the course of our coursework. As I had previously connected YouTube with my Postgres account, I found it very easy to display videos I created to present my final ideas and other plans. I found it easy to upload videos from quite a few formats once I had recorded myself, and thought it was simple to edit such things as titles, add annotations when explaining a point, and other connected tools. At times I had trouble in college with both Postgres and YouTube due to the sites being blocked by the IT technicians for unnecessary content, which delayed the process of some parts of my work. The site Bubbleless was also beneficial in pre-production because I used this website to create quick bubble diagrams to present my original ideas. This was easily saved onto an account which I had made for free, and I was able to save my ideas without them getting lost. Using an embedded code, I was freely allowed to present these ideas onto my blog as though I had written them down, and in turn help my ideas progress from these quick ideas. I use Microsoft Office programs quite a lot throughout the pre-production stage. These programs were Microsoft PowerPoint, Word and Excel. I use Microsoft Word frequently when creating production schedules for each week. I also used it for creating newspaper articles, questionnaires, interviews and completing call sheets. It was extremely useful when creating written documents and helped me further information through surveys I created. I use Microsoft PowerPoint to present my final ideas, such as my initial newspaper ideas. Another program on Microsoft I used was Excel, which I used after the feedback for my mastheads, where I created a pie chart to tally which masthead percentage won. I use the site Prezi.com to create an interactive presentation when I researched the conventions of a radio advertisement. At first I thought this website was difficult to use through the confusing layout of tools. However, after I revisited this site for the second time, I viewed the tutorial and was able to use this easier and quickly. Through Prezi, I was also able to import video and sound files, unlike Microsoft PowerPoint, to show examples of real media text and how I could follow their examples. When evaluating my work, I found that the program iMovie on my home Mac laptop was extremely useful to not only create video blogs to convey my ideas, but to also create interactive presentations. I use this program in most of my work to textually analyze media text, relay my ideas on my blog, and lastly evaluate my whole coursework projects. Through iMovie, I was able to develop my skills in video editing through the use of a timeline to layer and structure each individual element to the video, import video clips, pictures and sound, and add transitions to break up large quantities of speech or text. I also found that I was able to be creative with this software, unlike other beginning video editing software. This is because I was simply able to change the font for a point which I needed to specify. For example, when commenting on an A2 newspaper product, I often used the font American Typewriter, as it followed the conventions of an original newspaper documentation. I was also able to add colour to each transition. These were usually bright colours such as red and even industrial themes to convey a work situation. These colours and themes allow me to separate work which may originally have appeared mundane to a tolerable video. After creating this video, I was then able to export it in HD and upload the file to YouTube, which would then be embedded onto my blog. In the production stage, I found that I used quite a few major pieces of technology in my work to initially create and shoot my newspaper and ancillary products. I used the Zoom H2 handy recorder specifically for my ancillary radio product. This was used as a sound recorder and ensured that speech on sound recorded would sound clear and professional like in a real media text. When I first started using this mic, when we began the production stage, I thought it would be hard to use. However, after a few practice attempts at recording sound, I found that it was quite simple to use and was able to create good sound without complicating the process. After I had recorded my speech for my ancillary product, I decided that I should find some sound effects which would relate to a charity fundraiser. This meant that I had to search the internet for an appropriate sound effects site which would allow free and legal sounds to be used by the public. After this, I found a site called soundbible.com which allowed free access, which enabled me to add effects to my work. A problem which I had with this site was that at times I couldn't find the appropriate sound effects which would go with a carnival theme. This meant that I had to use alternative sounds instead of the original effects which I intended. When in the production of my newspaper, I used a compact camera, a Hitachi HDC 1491E, in order to take images for my main story and a weather story on the second page of my newspaper. I was able to take photographs using this camera in my local area and was able to use the family camera easily with a previous experience. After I had taken these images, I was able to transfer them easily onto my laptop using an SD card and then send a select few to my Postgres, which looked the most effective. I have also found that both Photoshop and Quark are used in both the production stage and the post-production stage. Firstly, I used Adobe Photoshop elements mostly in both my AS and A2 project to manipulate elements of an image, which were then imported into other forms of production. I was able to use Photoshop to use the microelement mise-en-scène effectively. I did this by lowering the contrast of the image and rendering the lighting effects on the image to a certain degree, which allowed the outer edges of my main newspaper images to be faded black. This enabled me to suggest an implied meaning to the audience alike, which Roland Barthes suggests when saying photographs are heavily manipulated to reflect meaning. My most recent A2 project, I used Photoshop to remove unnecessary elements within photographs. I was able to further my skills using this program through various tools I had not previously needed in my earlier work. Within my ancillary print product, I found that the background of my main image was not as effective as planned. This allowed me to use the crop tool to cut down the image of a focused attention on the model in the center. I was then able to use a lasso tool to outline the background around my model and use the eraser tool to remove the unnecessary background which previously filled most of the picture I had taken. Another tool I found myself using more within my A2 project was the Magic Wand tool or Marquee, which allowed me to change large sections of colours. I again used this method within the print product so that the image which I had edited had a transparent background instead of a large mass of white. By adding these effects onto the photograph and enlarging the image, I found that I challenged the female stereotype, as the generic idea of males being more athletic crops up in most media texts. However, in my work, I decided to challenge this, in turn creating a role model for the audience. Another major program I used within both productions was Quark Express 8. I found that in production and post-production of my A2 product that placing guides such as text and image boxes were incredibly helpful when coming to creating the product as a whole, and thought the product was made simpler through this means of planning. In my first project, it also allowed me to keep a consistent house style for my own individual newspaper by using the master layout to ensure that the software would repeat specific fonts so that I was not continuously making these changes. In the rest of post-production, I found that the only other product which I edited during this time was my radio advertisement. I used GarageBand as a source to create my radio advertisement in my A2 college work. This was a quite simple program to use as I was able to upload sound files straight onto a song layout and begin automatically editing it. I found that I used this piece of technology to create conventions through speeding up the dialogue in the advert so that it appeared similar to a conventionally fast-paced advertisement voice. I also added sound effects that are conventionally used to convey an action or an idea for my work. I used a drum roll when the dialogue said roll up to simulate a carnival/funfair atmosphere, and a cheer when the speech mentioned winning a Wii console. I also used the bass sound, which was a generic carnival tune, so that the audience would understand the atmosphere at the event would be represented by the music in the advert. Lastly, I repeated the name of my newspaper on the cell line, as after researching radio advertisements in the pre-production stage, I found that various newspapers repeatedly did this in their own professional ads. The last program I used was ScreenFlow. This program was used as a substitute for the software CamStudio. This was because my MacBook Pro at home did not support this program, and therefore I had to revert to a Mac-based screencasting software. I found that it was slightly more advanced than CamStudio, as I was able to add effects to my clips once I had recorded the on-screen footage. This helped me show evidence of how I created work elements of my work, such as showing how I had added effects on Photoshop. However, I found that my previous experience with Camstudio at home was quite difficult, as I could only use it on my family computer. I found that it lagged and often took too long to do simple things such as load a web page without going over time. Although at college I found that it moved smoothly and worked without any problems. In conclusion, I have found that my knowledge with the majority of the bigger programs such as Photoshop, Quark 8 and GarageBand has improved quite a lot throughout the stages of production. I also found that as well as improving my skills on these programs, that I also work with these once reusing them after my AS production. I found that I am now confident with my creating skills, and that as well as re-establishing myself with these programs, such things as radio advertisements challenge my knowledge and skills in media.